Is inequality necessarily a bad thing for the UK economy? And if it is, what does that tell us about the functioning of the free market? Welcome to Bonkers Economics. This is where we explore issues with the UK economy, looking at these images that I've created. You can see behind me. And this is episode 7 in our series 12 Reasons Why the UK Economy is Broken. And the image we're looking at today is this one here. And some of you would have seen it before, but it shows, for those of you who haven't, it shows the healthy life expectancy of people living in the wealthiest parts of the UK. And that's in the green circle, the whole green circle there. And that's about 72 years. And then here in the broken red circle is the healthy life expectancy of people living in the most deprived, the poorest parts of the UK. And that's about 52 years, so 20 years less. And that's a massive difference as a consequence of inequality. And just to be clear, healthy life expectancy, that means the number of years you can expect to live without contracting some sort of terminal or chronic illness. And it's roughly the same for men and women, even though total life expectancy for women is slightly longer. So that's the picture we're looking at. As I say, it's a picture of massive inequality. And that's clearly bad news for people who live in the most deprived areas of the country. But what does it say about the economy as a whole? Does it mean that we are less wealthy as an economy than we might otherwise be? So to answer that, we need to think about what economics is, what is the economy in that sense. And of course, we're talking really about the production of goods and services and the consumption of goods and services. And there's a balance between what you produce and what you consume. And to produce anything, you need to have access to resources. And to consume something, you need to have access to money to pay for the things that are being produced. So there's a sort of circle of activity in which money is the sort of oil which lubricates the wheels of the thing. And these people here, they've got access to much less money, and therefore they're not able to consume as much, they're not able to buy as much, and they're also not able to produce as much, because you can't produce if you don't have access to resources. So there's a whole sector, a whole part of society which is not living the best life it can because it doesn't have access to resources. And that means the economy is, in effect, smaller than it would otherwise be because there's less being produced and less being consumed within that economy. And that's because so much of the wealth, of the money, has been stacked away, as it were, in the wealthiest parts of the economy, and there it's not really being used in a productive way. It's sort of sitting there, it's being accumulated, been extracted from the economy, and beyond a certain point people can only use a certain amount of money in their lives, and the rest of it is just, in a sense, going to waste, sitting away in some sort of deep freeze somewhere. So distributing that money more evenly across the economy, doing something about this picture of inequality, would make the economy more active, it would make the economy livelier, more would be going on, more wealth would be being produced, it would be better for everybody, and actually no worse for the people who are currently fabulously wealthy, because they won't notice what they haven't got if they've still got plenty. So that's the sort of broad picture around inequality in the economy. But as I say, it's important to see how that relates to the question of the free market, because I get a lot of comments on YouTube, people saying, well, you're obviously not in favor of the free market, as if somehow the free market is the key to our success. And I always want to say to them, well, what do you mean by free? Because no market is free. The idea of a free market is for the birds. There've never been free markets. Markets have always been controlled by people, and those people are normally the wealthy and the powerful. But if you think about something like pharmaceuticals, drugs, for example, well, in the mid-19th century, any old quack could produce something in a bottle and call it a remedy, and they could sell it on the open market and nobody cared. And now, of course, as we know, the pharmaceutical companies are massively regulated, and the idea is that we believe that somebody is in charge of this process and making sure that the products that come onto the market, if they don't do us any good, at least they don't do us any serious harm. So there is a significant amount of control around that. And that's true in all sorts of areas. It's true in relation to food, for example, many regulations about food production. It's true in relation to buildings. Everything is regulated. Nobody can just produce something without fulfilling a set of rules and requirements about that product or service. And the same is true on the other side of the economy, the sort of paying side, if you like. We have rules such as the minimum wage, which is a restriction of the free market, fairly obviously, but it's designed to have good social effects. We have rules around, for example, trades unions, who are not allowed to withdraw their labour just whenever they want to. That's obviously a major breach of free market principles. We could have other rules, and when we don't, but we could have a rule that said that chief executives of companies could only get paid, say, I don't know, 10 times as much as their least paid employee. Well, that's the sort of rule that could be imposed, and you could say, well, that's another breach of the free market, but it's no different fundamentally to the many, many rules that constrain the free market at the moment. So as I say, no market is free, and to say, well, you obviously don't believe in the free market. No, I don't. Markets are not free. The question, the interesting question, is in whose interests are those rules drawn? And broadly speaking, as I say, we can assume, and in fact we can experience the fact that those rules are broadly drawn in the interests of people who have power and money and who are interested in accumulating more power and more money and more wealth. And interestingly enough, even if people who would like to change the rules get into power, they still find themselves apparently constrained by people who have all the money. So, for example, at the moment we have the Labour government, which would, I'm sure, like to change many of the rules around the economy, apparently unable to do so because they say they can't do anything which might upset the bond markets, which is the money side of things. And yes, there are things we can do to change that. There are ways in which the rules can be changed to redress the balance. That puts more power, if you like, into the hands of ordinary people. Freedom to access the market rather than freedom to exploit the market, if you like. There's all sorts of different ways we can use the word freedom in relation to free markets. But until we understand that the market is not free, the market is fundamentally stacked in somebody's interests throughout the entire piece, then we're not going to be able to address this problem. So these things are closely related, and it just requires a rethink. Like so many other things, we come to the same conclusion every time, if you like, that a rethink around the entire economic framework is required. And all this tinkering at the edges that governments try to do, it's not really going to cut it. Until we rethink what we want from the economy, until we understand that things like the free market are not for real, then we're not going to get in a situation where we can make the changes that we really need. So anyway, thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please do press that famous like button just underneath, because that really helps. And please do subscribe, and thank you if you already have. And please do tell your friends, family, and get them involved in the conversation. And look at the website too, because that contains a huge amount of information, background information, and all the data from all these images. And finally, also on the website, you'll find a link to where you can buy postcards of these images. Now, they make really good conversation starters with your friends and family. Having postcards in your hand with these images on them and a bit of text on the back, that's a way to start talking about these economic questions, wade into a conversation that's not necessarily terribly easy when it's based on a long screed of text or something of that sort. So do consider that as an option. They're not expensive. As I say, they're available on the website right now.